In the coaching and consulting world, everyone talks about success, but few people talk about what it really takes to get there. I'm Kevin Holly, and this is Coaches Unplugged, where we pull back the curtain and have honest conversations with the people shaping the industry. In each episode, you'll hear how top coaches and consultants built their businesses, faced their challenges, and continue to grow, both in impact and in mindset. No fluff, no pretense, just real stories, real lessons, and real talk about what it takes to build something that lasts. Today on Coaches Unplugged, we have someone who has completely transformed the way the world thinks about recruiting. He's the associate principal consultant at Riviera Advisors and is known around the globe as the father of sourcing. And trust me, that title is well earned. For nearly 30 years, he has helped companies like Google, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, and Cisco find and connect with top talent. His influence stretches across more than 300 organizations worldwide, blending data, technology, and a whole lot of heart to make recruiting smarter and more human. He's also an author, sought-after speaker, and he's the host of Shally's Alley, where he shares powerful insights from across the talent space. Beyond the titles, he's a returned Peace Corps volunteer, a mentor, and someone who's truly dedicated to guiding the next generation of talent leaders. We're thrilled to have him on the show today. Shally Steckerl, welcome to Coaches Unplugged.
Thank you. Wow, that is I want to record that introduction. That was pretty amazing. Good job there. Who
No
is this
problem,
guy? I
no
want to meet him.
problem. Thanks for yeah. Thanks for joining us. We definitely are glad to have you on the show here.
Good
Can
to
you
hear.
start off with our audience a little bit about your background and also your current role and how it really fits into the bigger picture at Riviera Advisors?
Okay. Well, I've been in the business of helping organizations hire people for roughly 30 years now. And I had quite an interesting journey through all different aspects of that industry from, being a commission only person to building businesses, helping other people build businesses, working in almost every industry sector, corporate, all over the place. So it's been quite the storied path. Along the way, I built my own companies. I had three, I wrote three books and I've also had three businesses that one failed because of the September 11th attacks and the things that happened after that that kind of crushed the industry. So one of those businesses went out. The other one I sold, and then the third one essentially also failed because of COVID. We just, we kept it alive as much as we could and eventually just kind of went dormant. But I've revived that business recently under a completely new umbrella. So it just kind of, went dormant for a little bit. Right now, my role with Riviera Advisors is that Riviera is a management consulting firm focusing in the talent acquisition space. And we work as a firm with leaders in talent acquisition in-house at corporations, at employers, if you will, to help them optimize and strengthen their workflows, their processes, answer questions from people that are just getting started in the role, all the way to senior executives that just need help with strategy and looking at ways to solve internal challenges. The firm has some partners that collectively have well over 100 years of experience in that subject matter. So my role there is as a partner, I work with some of the clients and I also have my own business on the side. Many of the partners have their own practice as well that doesn't conflict with the firm. So under Riviera Advisors, I work with large enterprises and mid-sized companies looking to optimize their talent acquisition processes. But under my own umbrella, my own company, I work with individuals as a coach. So I kind of have a little bit of both. The two businesses don't really interfere with each other, if you will.
Wow. And how long have you been with your own company?
Well, I had my own business. This is essentially, I guess, the fourth time, although technically it's the third time revisited. But I've been self-employed since 1998 under different guises as a consultant and business owner. This time around, it's been now about 3 years on this current journey. It's a similar business, but it's a different business model than the one that folded. The business that I was in before during COVID involved training and workshops, and that was something that just kind of went away with the way that the economy was. People weren't investing in education and all that. So this time around, instead of being a training business, it's a coaching business, which is a little different. And it's more of a, as I'm sure you've heard before, lifestyle business where I can maintain a certain income without having to grow into, the goal isn't to grow a company that'll be traded in the night in the stock exchange, but rather to maintain it as a small business. So I think for that reason, this time around, things are very different and quite successful.
Awesome, awesome. You sound like you have your hand in a few different things, which is awesome. Tell us, what does a typical day look like for you these days? I know that may be a tricky question because no day is typical, right? But what on any day, if someone were to walk in, or let's say you had a your own personal videographer follow you around for any day, any random day, what would someone find you doing typically?
Yeah, I'm afraid that's probably not very exciting, but I can break down, an average workday if I was to compose one out of the different parts of workdays throughout the week. I'd say a good 10 to 20% of my time is spent on what I would consider marketing activities of some sort, whether that's writing something or posting or participating somewhere. So that would be more along the lines of like just getting the word out in various mechanisms, lots of different things, but I would put on under marketing rather than sales. It really isn't really any hard sales. Another probably 20% of that would be just all the logistics and operations, paying bills, sending invoices, transactional stuff. So that's a good 30 to 40% of my day. The rest of the day, I would say, is split into two different types of activities. I'm either working individually as a consultant, coaching people one on one through workshops or in meetings and training sessions, or I'm putting together some sort of deliverable for a client. And that means executing on the work, if you will. So a good 60% of my job is still either individually working as a coach or individually producing some kind of deliverable that's part of the bigger picture. That is where the team comes in. So I add a component to that. And now the nature of that there's so many different things involved in that, anything from putting together artifacts for delivering to a customer to doing interviews and putting together slide decks, all that kind of stuff.
Well, so I mean, with that being said, we do talk to a lot of different coaches and consultants in the industry, and one thing in common that we've found is that just about everyone had something that happened, whether it be in their personal life or in their career, that they would consider to be a turning point or a shifting point, if you will, that changed the trajectory of their purpose and in this industry. Can you point to anything in your career or even in just your life as a whole that sort of shifted or maybe alter the direction to lead you to where you are now?
It's so in the direction of like the business, the industry that I'm in, or are we thinking more metaphysically than that?
The industry that you're in specifically, your own company, right? Because you also you have,
Got
as
it.
you mentioned, you've had your own
My own businesses
variation of
before.
your own company
Yeah,
for, a few different times, and the current company you've been with for 3 years now. So, how has that what happened, or is there something that happened that
definitely.
led you to where you are now?
Yeah.
One specific incident, yeah.
There is. Yeah. Originally, the reason I am in the industry at all is essentially serendipity. I accidentally entered a pool tournament. I entered the pool tournament on purpose, but the serendipity part of it is the people that I met during the tournament. So, because I was in that tournament, as a result of that, I met some folks that owned a staffing firm, and that's how I got exposed to the market. And also, I literally fell into it. I had no idea about this industry before, but serendipitously kind of found my way to it. But the reason that I have my business now, and for the last 3 years, why I jumped from being a corporate, being a corporate leader back into going into a solo operator is actually that is also an event. It's an event that happened slowly over a period of 6 months, but it is a single event. I was diagnosed with cancer, and I let my employer know that I was probably going to have to, undertake some occasional treatments and might have some Friday afternoons where I wasn't able to come to work. That the employer had an unlimited policy as far as PTO, and I was a top performer. I had no reason to expect what happened, but essentially they terminated me because of that. And I found myself in the unemployment line in a particularly bad period of time, not as bad as now, but still pretty bad. And I ran into a lot of the problems people are running into today finding a job, just kind of earlier, you know. So the event really was just me essentially giving up, being so frustrated with the job search and just giving up hope that I would actually find a job that I wanted. And I was finding myself settling for, I could do this job. And like, I can imagine myself taking a job that I didn't want just to have a job. And I thought, that's just no way to live, especially considering I just recovered from cancer and all that. So I quit the job search and said, I might as well spend all the time and energy that I'm spending trying to find a job instead trying to build a business. And it was the best choice because, that has since then tripled my salary. I mean, I make 3 times more now than I did when I had a corporate job. So the best thing this company could have done was to fire me because I had cancer. I mean, thank God they did that because now I'm here,
Exactly. Right. Right. And it's like that's one of those things where you don't understand, it's a blessing disguised as a terrible incident, right? You didn't know in that moment that you would have been here today. I'm sure you were pretty upset that you got fired at the time, but looking back, you're able to look back with a positive mindset and say, wow, thankfully that happened, right? Because look where you are now. That's awesome.
Thank
For
you. Yeah.
sure. For sure. As far as I know, your specialty is talent acquisition. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're
What
Yeah.
some
So
people, in lay terms would be recruiting, but recruiting for the employer, not for a staffing firm, which is the commission based job. And the distinction, although I started in that space, the distinction is when you work as an agent of the employer directly for the employer, you don't get a commission for the people that you hire. Your job is to hire people, and that is what you're getting paid for. You don't get paid based on on earning some kind of commission. That's the distinction.
what do you think sets you apart from other recruiters? What makes you so successful with it?
I think the easy answer to that, because I really can't point to something tangible like I've got this degree or anything like that, the easy answer to that is I've just always been someone that doesn't give up. So there's a component of grit that has been there probably for all the wrong reasons, childhood trauma or who knows what, but I just refuse to take no for an answer. However, I'm not a salesperson in the sense that I'm not the don't take no for an answer salesperson. I'm the don't take no for an answer, get it done yourself, roll up your sleeves kind of person. And for that, it's just allowed me to explore ways to do our job that other people just never explored. And so the grit led to the discovery, if that makes sense. That's what makes me stand out is where other people might have looked for other ways or, you know, turned left or turned right. I just kept bashing my head into the wall until until the wall came down. Not necessarily the best way to do it, by the way, but that was it. That's what did it.
And it worked for you,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
for
I mean,
sure.
there's a lot more successful people out there that make a lot more money in this industry than I do. But I mean, I'm here and I'm doing it and I'm getting paid and that's good.
Definitely. What are some of obviously I know that there's been a lot that's changed over the last several years post COVID and, just in general, even outside of COVID. What have been some of the challenges you've noticed among coaches and consultants lately?
Well, so there's a lot of opportunity to reinvent yourself in a market, but it's also very noisy. Take for example AI, or what we call what is hyped up as being AI, which is not really AI. And I think people sort of kind of know that. But there's this mass hysteria everybody's bought into that AI is going to take your job, AI is going to do everything. You can just tell AI to do whatever, and it's going to. There's all these misconceptions. The fact of the matter is if you actually apply yourself and you learn how to use these tools like any other tool, like you would have had to do when social media came around, like you would have had to do when Google came around and search became a thing and the internet became a thing. It's no different than internet or social media. It's another tool set. If you really put your mind to it and you actually apply yourself, you can leverage that technology as a way to make money and in the things that you do to make money. But it's not a button that you push and it just instantly pops up. The instant gratification really isn't there. You still have to put in the work, hence the grit and the bang in your head. So at the same time that it is noise and distracting, it can also be an opportunity. What I think is different this time around is that this is a level of noise unlike any I've seen before. And the acceleration of how ridiculous people's expectations are of AI is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's almost like mass hypnosis, mass hysteria. People are convinced that AI can do anything and everything. And the people that know, actually know, they realize that, it's another tool like social media. Is it going to change the world? Yeah, I think it already has. But is it this miraculous technology? No, it's not. It's been around since the and it's almost 100-year-old technology. Logic and decision trees, just in a scale that we've never seen before. So I think a lot of the business is still the same. You have to find a way to stand out. You have to find a way to be differentiated and distinguished without necessarily being unique, because it's a lot harder now with so much noise to be unique, right? You can't necessarily be the only one that does something, but you can be the best one. And you don't really necessarily want to be the best one that does something. You just need to be the best one that does that thing in that way that people need, right? That's why there's successful coaches that are teaching how to cook. Are you telling me that, we've gotten to the point where there's enough cooks in the world? No, there's still people that make successful businesses teaching yoga, coaching people. So you just have to find the angle, and that's no different. What is different is that we can now leverage ourselves 3 times over, and what used to take a company of 5 people to achieve, you can probably achieve with 1.5 people nowadays.
For sure. For
You and a
sure.
part-time researcher or something like that. So it's made it easier, but you still have to figure out what your distinction is.
Definitely. There will always be the human element that's needed to regulate whatever we're using, whether it be the internet, whether it be social media, whether it be artificial intelligence. There always will be the need, especially in the coaching and consulting industry, for the human touch, right? So definitely a great point and thank you for bringing that up as well. As far as challenges, what are you seeing? Obviously, you're the assistant principal consultant with Rivera Advisors, but then you also have your own company, which is called what, by the way?
TSI University. So T as in Tango, S as in Sierra, I as in Indigo, TSIUniversity.com. Unfortunately, I didn't realize at the time how many TSI universities there were. So if you Google TSI University, there's a gazillion, but there's only one, TSIUniversity.com. So
Got it.
there you have it.
Got it. That's interesting that you call it university. Is it more of an educational program design
Well,
that you
yeah, it
offer?
started out that way.
Okay.
The original version of my business was a training business. But the difference is that training, so there's a, not to wax fantastic and get philosophical here, but there's a fundamental difference between education and training, much like there's also a fundamental difference between training and coaching, right? A coach and a trainer are different, and a teacher are different. Coach, trainer, teacher. Now, one person can operate in all 3 modalities. One person can be a coach and a trainer and a teacher and a facilitator and a speaker and a mentor. But these are all different roles. The original role of the business was a training business, which is teaching people how to do the job so that they can go and do that job that way. And that model didn't really work in our industry. And so that's partly why the business ended up folding. Not only that, but with COVID, there just wasn't a lot of appetite for training. This business, which is more about the coaching and the community aspect, is a lot more like education versus training. So it's closer to a coach educator than it is a trainer, as opposed to, let me show you how to do something, you go do it, and now they know how to do it. This is more about, let me show you how to put together tools for yourself, how to enable yourself, how to, so in that way, it's more of a university, and I'm using a Socratic method, very similar to what the original universities were, the lyceums, if you will, of old, which we use that technology and that word a lot nowadays. We don't really know what it means as what it was, the peripatetic, Platonic, Socratic school system, where you're teaching by helping people arrive at their own conclusions, as opposed to teaching by giving them a lesson that they have to remember and answer questions in a test, right? It's different. So it's closer to that in that capacity as a coach. And so university is a much better name for it. We also still are on LinkedIn, for example, registered as a university. So if you went into your profile and you were taking classes with us and coaching with us, you can actually put it under your education section, which is very rare. There's not a lot there. Actually, I don't think of any, I can't think there's not any other organization that coaches in our space that actually has that. So that is in and of itself a bit of a
That's
distinction.
huge.
Our material is college credit eligible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So tell me this. So, obviously you split your time between Rivera Advisors and also TSI University. What percentage do you spend committed to each? Would you say 50-50? Is half your time committed to Rivera and the other half TSI? Or at this stage of the game, are you more invested into TSI because that's your own, if you will?
It's a fair question. I feel like, as a partner in Riviera, it is also my own. I don't own it. I mean, there is a person who owns Riviera that is the principal, the boss, if you will. But I do feel a sense of ownership for it. I think it's probably closer to 70-30, and mostly because business is slow for Riviera right now. On the 30 side, it's slower, if you will, than it has been in previous years, mostly because there's been a massive shift in the market. You've probably heard about all the layoffs, and you've heard about a lot of the wave making going on with companies letting go of people because they think AI is going to do their job, only to find out 6 months later they were wrong and have to hire him back. So all of this has led to some tumultuous, uneven ride, if you will. So I'm not currently engaged in any major projects. The projects that we have are small enough that it fits into that 30%. If we landed a larger customer, and we do have customers that we have bids out to where it required more of my time, then it would probably go back to 50-50.
Gotcha. But right now, most of your focus is shifted to TSI,
Yeah,
which
70-30.
rightfully so.
And again, it's
That's
because we're
awesome.
in the growth stage, right? So,
Right.
right now is a good time. It just serendipitously happened to be things are a little bit slower at Riviera. And so I can take that 20% and put it into marketing to grow the business. And so maybe when we get a larger client and I go back to 50-50, I won't need to do as much marketing. It works out. I'm dedicated to both, and I manage my time really well. Part of what I'm adept at is I'm good about time blocking and tracking my activities. So I'm always transparent about what I'm doing, which means I don't overcommit. If I know it's going to take me 3 days to complete a project, um, I calculate 5 days, and I tell the client 6 days, and then I do it in 3 days to over deliver. And that way, I'm always able to kind of fit things in. I think as a coach, a lot of other people in my space as coaches make the mistake of taking on too much, and that can take a lot of shapes. It can be trying to run the business yourself instead of outsourcing some of that. Like, you really need to focus on what it is that you know how to do that only you can do. If anybody else could do it, if you could outsource it because there's businesses out there that do your accounting for you, why become an expert in that? So part of it is learning what you can offload and trust other people to do because it's their specialty, right? So as a coach, I have a coach. You see what I mean? Coaches have coaches,
Exactly.
trainers have trainers. Even the
Absolutely.
greatest athletes and performers of all time, Roger Federer was famous for saying he had three coaches. He had a swing coach, he had a physical, like a gym coach, basically, and an athletic coach. So, and he had them until the very last day that he played professionally. Everybody can always use a good coach if that coach is helping you with something that is not your expertise.
There's always a next level. You've never once you stop growing, you start dying, right? You're either growing or dying. There's no in between. So
No in between.
absolutely, there's always a need for a coach and for someone to show you how you can become even better. So
Yeah,
that's
so I
awesome.
focus more on that side right now, but
Yeah,
I'm not overcommitted. If I needed to spend more time on the other, I would, wrap up some of the customers that I'm working with now. Because there's no such thing as a lifetime customer. I mean, you can have lifetime relationships, but even my customers, even my coaching customers, they don't need me all the time, right? It ebbs and
right.
flows. So as long as you're good at being transparent about what you're doing and planning, it's easier to juggle that.
Definitely. Now, Shally, with you spending 70% of your focus on TSI University, share with our listeners what's working well for you right now in your business. That's the first part. Second part of the question would be what's been the most frustrating?
Ironically, I was just saying that. So what's working really well, that is the one of the secrets to this version of my business being really successful, is I hired a coach. So I have a coach. I hired a coach that helps me build community. They're a community building expert. And so their job is to keep the community engaged and vibrant. They help me with operating and running all the things that I know how to do, but they also know how to do, and they charge a lot less than I do. So they help me with that part of the business so I can focus on only the things that I know how to do, or the things that only I know how to do, I should say, right? So that's been I tried to do that myself before, and it's been a big help to have someone that I can trust and rely on because I know that that's their expertise, and I if they are going to do something, they just take care of it. It's a little hard to give up a piece of your business because as a solopreneur, this is just me. I'm the only one that owns the business, but they get paid on performance. So as the community grows, they get a little bit more money. So they're definitely incentivized. That's the big one. The hard one, I got to tell you, has been the absolute just deafening and drowning amount of noise that's out there. There are so many different things vying for people's attention that it's hard to believe that we're not all partly schizophrenic, with just so much. I mean, everything's coming at us. Everybody wants our eyes, our ears, it doesn't matter where you go. People, organizations, entities find a way to advertise to try to reach you. And there's a lot of that. And everybody's trying to control their own, little piece of land. So I'd say probably the biggest problem that I have is LinkedIn. And that's because the formula that LinkedIn uses to measure your content, what they consider quality is they use audience engagement metrics. And unfortunately, that's the absolute worst thing that you could possibly do because of the audience, right? People only engage with things that they find touch them emotionally and they react. But that doesn't mean that that is quality content. So you can write an article on LinkedIn that is extremely, utterly important and valuable and has lots of impact potential, but nobody votes on it because it doesn't drive that emotional reaction. However, you can also write an article that has nothing but, instance karma satisfaction. It has zero business value, but it'll go viral and get 1,000 or a million views or 10 million. It's ridiculous, right? So if you have valuable information, you can waste it on LinkedIn because nobody will see it because it doesn't strum those strings. It doesn't play that tune. And it's a terrible way to measure quality of content. Essentially, it's basically Facebook, pretty much, right? So they've taken a business platform and turned it into nothing more than likes and retweets. Facebook mixes with X and Twitter. So it's taken a lot of that away. And as a coach, as a business owner, it's really hard to cut through that. It can be done, but it requires a lot of effort and a lot of practice and a lot of expertise. And to do that and still maintain your genuine value, because you have to let go of the vanity metrics, basically. You have to say likes don't matter, clicks don't matter. What matters is somebody actually signs up and pays me. And then you have to focus all of the energy that you used to focus on your vanity and chasing those metrics and put that energy into delivering on that person that just paid, right? So you've got to abandon
Sure.
all of the noise that the machine makes and focus on the people who pay because that's how you get paid. It's a difficult balance, but it's also, and I think it's a terrible way to run LinkedIn, but at the same time, if you figure it out, it's a competitive advantage. It's just not very easy to figure out. Let me tell you, don't download a one sheet that says, here's how you do it. It doesn't work.
Right. I hear you. No, that's a very valid point. If you don't know what you're doing, it can definitely blind you and lead you down a path where you're just worse off than you were before. I mean, there's
Get
so many.
a lot of views, but no
Yeah,
dollars, right? Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And we're in the information age right now where we have all the information in the world at our fingertips. Yet information alone is not enough. We need to know how to actually apply that information to actually get results. So
That's the
that's
formula. And the results are
definitely
not
a valid
views.
point.
The
Right.
results are people actually checking out of your shopping cart, making a
Exactly.
purchase. It's hard to connect the two because you think, well, if I get more views, I'm going to get more people coming going to, but believe it or not, actually that doesn't happen. You can get a lot of views and nobody goes to your shopping cart, or you can get 10 views and 3 people bought something.
Right.
It's like, wow, okay, I just made more money on 3 clicks than I did on 10,000 clicks.
Exactly. Exactly. Conversion is key. It's definitely key. Shally, what's next for you and your business? Where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself 6 to 12 months from now in your company?
I think things are at a turning point and they're going to accelerate pretty quickly over the next 6 months. So it's kind of hard to tell, but what I want to do and where I want to go is to open this platform up to invite others to participate in it. So I can have other coaches join me and we can have a chorus of coaches in this platform, in this sector, because there really isn't anything like that out there. There are other training platforms, but like I said, training isn't really it doesn't really work. Not the way people think it does. And it's hard to make money doing it. So this is different. This is more like bringing, the top 10 chefs in the world together into one chef coaching academy, right? It's not the Culinary Institute of America. It's not the institution, but it's still 10 strong voices that carry a tune a lot further than any one of them by themselves could. A cohort, if you will, a cadre, a karetsu,
Mhm.
a kaizen, whatever you want to call it. There's so many ways to say it, but to have a dozen or so people like me together providing content for others and be able to share and shoulder some of the burden of running the business would be great, but still keep it all as independence. I don't want to own anything and I think that's very possible. We're already seeing interest in others creating content in our platform.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you're already seeing the it trickle in, which is
Yep.
that's great.
Yeah. So I think if that takes off, then it'll be TSI University and it won't be just Shally. It'll be Shally and friends or whatever.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you talk about that goal being to basically grow into a team, right? A team of coaches. What do you think that one thing in your business that would be holding you back or slowing you down from getting to that point?
The magic wand would be a magic wand that magically undresses people. And what I mean by that is it reveals to me their real self because it, I don't want to invite coaches into this community that don't have the same abundance mentality that I do. The last thing I want to do is to pollute our community with someone that's, ultimately self motivated and self interested. Now, we all need to be self interested because the only way you're going to take care of yourself is if you're self interested. But there's a way to do that where you're part of a community and you believe that as the pie gets bigger, everybody's slice gets bigger. And there's people out there who are very, very, very good at wanting the whole pie and never telling you that that's what they want until it's too late. So my magic wand would tell me which of them are truly givers that are abundance minded that are going to contribute and make us all better versus the ones that say they are but then start cannibalizing and become a cancer in the community, which happens all too often. It's very easy for narcissists and psychopaths to invade social media and communities because they're reward. This is the problem that I was talking about with the LinkedIn algorithm. People that are like that, they're rewarded for that behavior. Narcissists and psychopaths are rewarded for their behavior with likes because they post content that they know other people will like. And that means that they let people like the content and that gives them a bigger voice. But that doesn't necessarily mean that those people are the ones who I want in my community. So, in other words, I don't want 12 very famous people. I want 12 really good people.
Exactly.
And so my magic wand would tell me who's good versus who wants to be famous.
Right. Right. Your magical wand would be something that reveals someone's true character without them having to open their mouth.
Yeah, in a good way. Like I just, hey, if you're looking for likes and you want that foreign currency of, self validation and ego boost, great. I'm not saying don't, just not here, not with me.
Right.
That's not what I want. That's not what I do. And so that's what I want is the ones that are more genuine, like the ones that get that 3 signups is better than 10,000 views. Those are the ones that I want. And that's really hard to do because the loud ones that are out there self-promoting themselves all the time and are solipsistic narcissists, they're the ones everybody sees. They're the ones that get
Yeah.
famous.
Right. You're absolutely right. Especially like I said, now in this day and age where everything is so digitalized, where you scroll on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook and you see all
Mhm.
these reels and ads, and those are
And you don't know which ones are
the shiny
paid, which ones are
objects.
organic, which exactly.
Exactly.
Yep, and they all
Exactly.
make
So
everything seem like everything is perfect, and, I
yep.
love those memes where they show you, the guys on the beach sipping a cold beer with an umbrella, and they're taking a selfie on the beach, and then there's another guy taking a picture of them taking a picture, and it's some dude in a dirt pile in a construction site. You see what I'm saying? Totally
Yep.
faking it. Like that's what they want you to see the dude on the beach, but it's actually a dirt pile at a construction site. Well,
Right.
that's what happens, and that's what we're rewarding. That's what LinkedIn rewards now. If you're the dude on the beach saying, I'm having a margarita, I'm having a great time, and you're lying to people, basically that's what that is. It's an outright lie. You're making them think that you're at the beach. LinkedIn will go crazy for that and everybody will vote on it, but nobody's going to click and buy your recipe.
Very true. Very true. Shelly, we'll wrap up with this here for our listeners and for the sake of our episode here. How are you evolving to stay relevant and innovative with all of these changes that we're talking about and all of the outside noise that I heard you refer to earlier? But that's the first part. The second part of this question would be, what advice would you have for whether it be coaches that are listening that are just getting started in this industry, or maybe we have, there's the seasoned coach or consultant who's listening in who maybe they are going through a struggle in their business where they're trying to get over the hump, if you will. So first, how are you evolving? And then secondly, what advice would you share as your the greatest piece of advice that maybe you've ever received to help you in your career?
I think I'm gonna go back to my cooking analogy. I guess I might be hungry, but I think cooking is something a lot of people can relate to. If they're not themselves, a chef, at least they can appreciate it. There's a bit of an analogy, about a good chef and a bad chef, or um, or maybe it's a maxim, not an analogy, that suggests that a good chef has one high quality, very sharp knife that is extremely well honed. And they know how to use that knife with precision and efficiency. A sharp knife is safer, it's more effective, it's more useful. A bad chef has a collection of 50 knives, doesn't maintain them, but they have a paring knife and a chef's knife and a butcher knife and all these things. And they're proud of having this big collection that they display on their wall of all the knives that they have with all the brand names. But it's not as good as one sharp knife. So I go to that analogy to point out the fact that I have to learn to do less. Every day I have to learn to do less. And the days that I do more, I actually get best lower results. The days that I do less, I get better results. It's like the chef's knife. Hone what it is that you do to a very fine point and keep that honed. The moment that you get distracted with 3 others and you start spreading out your attention, the one thing that you used to be good at, you're not good at anymore. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Powerful. Powerful. So essentially, it boils down to quality over quantity, if you will. That one sharp knife is way more
Yeah.
valuable than having 20 different knives that maybe do different things, but may not be the sharpest.
Yeah, and 20 more opportunities to make mistakes, 20 more
Yep.
opportunities to do something that doesn't matter, that doesn't get you results, and so on and so on. So, there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of noise. I think the trick is to experiment, like, go ahead and play with all 50 knives, but if you find one that you really like, then hone that one. Don't keep playing with more. If you're always out there, following every ship that passes you in the night, you'll never get to your destination. Like General Omar Bradley said, it's time that we start steering by the light of our own stars, not by the light of every passing ship. And so that translates into a coaching business in that, you know, eliminate the distractions, outsource the things that other people can just as well or even better do better than you. Focus in on what is it that you value and what is your specialty really, and learn that specialty. It doesn't have to be the only one, it doesn't have to be unique, but it does need to be distinct and it does need to be easily understood. If you can't explain that one sharp knife, then you're just selling smoke and mirrors, right? You're selling distractions, and people will eventually walk away, even if they might initially buy your
Exactly.
your whatever you're selling for the first period of time. That then they'll leave, and that's not really how you build a sustainable business, especially a lifestyle business like a coaching business, where you're never really going to be able to sell. With my second company, I was able to sell the company because it wasn't me. It was a business that I built, and that you can sell. Now, there's nobody's going to buy Shally, like the Shally community, right? Nobody's going to buy that. So this is built for me, for my lifetime. And that's very different. If that's what you're doing, if you're building it that way, then don't worry about all these other things, because scaling is going to happen if you're doing it right. You won't scale by buying a bunch of tools, trying different things, getting distracted, and essentially having the worst case of adult ADHD you could possibly imagine. Because there's a lot coming at us, and everybody wants your dollar.
For sure. For sure. Couldn't have said it better myself. Shally, where can our listeners keep up with you as far as any your latest insights and trains? I know you're the host of Shally's Alley, but if you would just share with our listeners where they can find you and stay in contact with you.
Yeah. So I have a website that is 4 letters: SRCN, Sierra Ray Charlie Nina .co, SRCN.co. From there, you can see both my Riviera. I have on the same page a link to my Riviera persona, if you will, and to TSI University. Both of my lives are merged there. Or if you're, looking for the coaching business, that's TSIUniversity.com. But SRCN.co is the landing page that is where you can buy my book, you can go to my LinkedIn profile, connect with me, send me a WhatsApp. All that stuff is all on that one page.
Perfect. And would you mind just sharing the name of your book?
The Talent Sourcing and Recruiting Handbook is the second book. I have 3. And the third one is The Sourcing Method. That's the latest one. That's the latest release. The Sourcing Method. You should be able to get to it if you Google it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks so much for that, Shally. A wealth of knowledge and insights and wisdom has been poured out during this episode. So I'm sure our listeners will find tremendous value in everything that you've shared with us. And to our listeners, thank you for listening and for being part of a conversation that is redefining what it means to grow, lead, and create impact. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it, follow along, and keep the energy moving forward. Because the future of coaching and consulting isn't written by chance, it's written by those willing to evolve. I'm Kevin Holly, and until next time, keep building something extraordinary.